The morning started like any other. Quiet, warm. I sat at the kitchen table, the same chair I always used, sipping chicory coffee from the same chipped mug. Louisiana spring sunlight poured through the blinds, dancing across the wooden floors. I remember thinking how the quiet was almost suspicious. That's what happens when your life has taught you not to trust the stillness. I had plans that day, simple ones. Go through the last of my father's things at the storage unit, maybe find a few tools to keep in the house. I wasn't looking for closure. I just needed to touch something that still had his fingerprints, his smell, something he hadn't left behind in pieces like the rest of us. I parked outside the unit a little after 10. It smelled like old paper and motor oil. I took my time, opening each box slowly. Then I saw it. Plain envelope, hand-labeled in his blocky writing. Legal. My first thought, maybe the will or insurance papers, but inside was something else. A deed, transferring land, to my sister, signed by me. I stared at the signature. It looked perfect. Too perfect. My name flowed across the page like someone traced it in slow motion. The date, 2 years ago, was when I could barely sign a grocery list, let alone a legal form. That was the year my world cracked open. Divorce, therapy, panic attacks, I was too proud to name. I turned the paper over in disbelief, like there might be another version of the truth on the back. And then I saw the pen tucked in the envelope. My pen. A black waterman with my initials engraved, DM. My father gave it to me when I got my first job. I never used it. Said it was too nice for bills and contracts. They used it. They didn't just take the land. They signed it away using the one thing my father gave me that felt like respect. It wasn't just fraud. It was something meaner, colder. This wasn't about real estate. This was about reminding me that in this family, love comes with conditions, and apparently, expiration dates. I didn't cry, not yet. I didn't scream either. I called the family attorney, Mr. Belden, still had the same number, same slow voice. We met the next day. His office hadn't changed. The smell of lemon oil and paper files and old arguments. He looked at the document, adjusted his glasses, said it seemed legitimate. I asked him when the will was read. He blinked once, cleared his throat. 6 months ago, he said. I wasn't invited. Your sister and mother said you'd been given your portion. I hadn't. They insisted you had, in writing. He didn't sound surprised, just finished. Like all the pieces had already fallen and he wasn't going to pick them up. That was the moment I realized I wasn't forgotten. I was removed. I didn't yell, didn't even raise my voice. I thanked him, walked out, got in my car, and drove. Now, some people, when they're angry, they pace. Some break things. I drive. No music, no calls, just me and the road and the sound of rubber against concrete. I pulled into a gas station lot and parked. Didn't need gas. I just sat there for 45 minutes, reading that document over and over like the words might change if I looked long enough. They didn't. And every time I looked at that signature, it mocked me, like someone cosplaying as me, like my voice had been stolen and used to shut me up permanently. I thought about high school, about being told to let it go, about sitting at the kid table when I was 25, about how silence becomes a habit so ingrained that speaking up feels like betrayal. And then the question came, do I fight? Do I let it go? Will anyone even believe me? Will they say I'm overreacting? Sensitive? Emotional? As always, that's the trick, isn't it? They raise you to be quiet and then punish you when you finally speak. I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. I wasn't letting this go. I drove home slow, stopped by the grocery store, picked up lemons and honey. Routine keeps you grounded when your world slips sideways. Back at home, I placed the forged deed and the pen inside my fireproof safe, sat at my desk, pulled out an old folder labeled Family History, Legal, and I started writing a new page. I didn't even need to think about what to title it. I never wanted war, but they just started one. I didn't bring it up during the family text chain, didn't ask why Charla was hosting the city's library renovation ceremony, didn't mention that my company had donated the security system that made the whole place safe to begin with. I told myself I'd go, be polite, clap when I was supposed to, smile, even if it hurt. That morning, I picked out a dark navy blouse, something soft but not quiet. I stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing a short thank you, nothing grand, just words to acknowledge the gift, the work, my team. Maybe this time, I thought, they'll let me belong without conditions. The community center was packed. Small town important, folding chairs, iced tea on tables, name tags with cursive print. I scanned the room and saw her. Charla, hair done, clipboard in hand, hugging a city councilman like they'd known each other forever. She looked through me. Not at me. Through. When the MC called her up, she glided to the mic. We're grateful for all our local contributors, especially those who made the new security system possible. No names, no titles, just that generic gloss that makes you invisible in front of a crowd. Then they called mine. Please welcome Devon Malloy. No CEO title, not even a sentence, just my name, like a note passed under the table. I walked up, calm, ready. The paper in my hand crinkled from sweat I refused to acknowledge. The mic didn't work. I tapped it once, twice, looked toward the AV booth. Nothing. The MC stepped forward. It's all right. Thank you, Devon. We're short on time. Short on time. Polite applause. I stood there for half a second too long, smiling like I didn't feel the slap. Sat down again, jaw clenched so tight I could feel it in my ears. Charla never looked over. She didn't need to. They didn't have to yell at me to shut me up. They just didn't plug in the mic. Later that night, I drove to Mama's house. I knew I shouldn't have. I should have let it go, but something in me needed to hear her say she didn't know, that it wasn't on purpose, that her silence wasn't approval. The porch light was on. Same plastic lawn chairs. Same porch swing that never swung. Inside, the air was thick with furniture polish and generational fatigue. Framed pictures lined the walls. Charla's boys at every age. School photos, football jerseys, graduation gowns. No pictures of me, not even the ones I sent. She was watching Wheel of Fortune with the volume too high. I sat down on the edge of the couch, holding a wooden frame in my lap. She barely looked up. Everything okay? Were you at the ceremony? I asked. She shrugged. Had errands. Why? They didn't let me speak. She raised an eyebrow. They didn't? No? Mic didn't work? They waved me off. She reached for the remote. You always find something to be dramatic about. I placed the frame on the coffee table. Inside it was a letter I wrote her after graduating college. A thank you for paying rent when I couldn't, for picking up the phone at 2 a.m., when I thought I'd drown in my own anxiety. I kept this all these years, I said. Thought maybe you did too. She stared at it for a beat, picked it up, turned it over, didn't open the back, didn't smile, set it aside. Next to the coasters. 15 minutes later, when I went to the kitchen for a glass of water, I saw the frame in the trash. Letter torn in half. I didn't take it out. I didn't say anything. I just walked back into the living room, sat down again, straightened my shoulders. She didn't look at me when she said it. Charla's the one who stayed. You ran off. Actions have consequences. The ride home was dark. I didn't turn the radio on. Didn't need any noise to fill what was already full. Birthday parties where my name wasn't on the cake. Christmases where my seat got taken because someone thought I wasn't coming. Years of thinking maybe it was just bad timing, or miscommunication, or my fault. But when you live in a house that only remembers your absence, you start to feel like a ghost even when you're standing in the hallway. Dad used to say, being quiet doesn't mean you're weak, but letting them silence you does. And they were trying, not with force, with erasure. I thought about walking away, letting them have the story, the silence, the land. But then I remembered the pen, that smooth black waterman, how something so personal had been turned into a weapon. No, not this time. When I got home, I opened my laptop, created a folder on my desktop. Evidence, internal use. Typed a note beneath it. Keep calm. Collect everything. If they're so afraid of my voice, maybe it's time I learn how to use it. The clerk at the parish courthouse was polite, maybe even too polite. She smiled the kind of smile you give someone who doesn't know yet that they're about to get hurt. "I can print that for you," she said, after typing my name into the system. "Give me just a sec." I nodded, keeping my hands folded. My fingers wouldn't stay still. Tapping, pressing my thumb into the side of my hand. Little fidgets I picked up during the worst of the divorce. They came back like muscle memory. She handed me the page. There it was, digital, clean, official. My name signed across a deed that transferred the property behind Daddy's house directly to Charla, and Cormac's name was there too, as a legal witness. The date? The same week I was in that clinic in Lafayette, trying to remember how to breathe. Not only did they steal from me, they waited until I was too broken to notice. I didn't say a word, just smiled, thanked her, folded the paper carefully into my folder, walked out like I had answers, not fresh bruises. 15 minutes later, I stood outside Ledoux Yates. Their front desk smelled like fake leather and cold coffee. The receptionist had a nervous smile, like she already knew what I came for, but had been told not to ask questions. "Is Cormac in?" I asked, casual as hell. She asked if I had an appointment. "No, but I'll wait." He came out after a good 15 minutes. Buttoned up, smug, eyes that scanned me like I was a spreadsheet with a math error. "Well, look who decided to drop by." "I had some paperwork questions," I said, just tying up some loose ends. He motioned me to a side room, closed the door. Didn't sit. "You know," he started, "you really should have checked your own files. You did sign that deed." "No, I didn't." "Well, your file says you did." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was the tone of a man too used to winning quietly. "You're welcome to dispute it, of course," he added. "But you know how that goes. Sometimes the courtroom's more about exposure than resolution." The threat hung there, sour and unoriginal. He didn't notice the legal assistant outside the glass wall, watching. But I did. I left without pushing. No reason to stir the pot just yet. But somebody in that office knew the truth. Maybe more than one somebody. By the time I got home, it was almost noon. I didn't eat, just sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up every email, every text, every scrap of anything from that week 2 years ago. Hospital discharge summary, dated and time-stamped, 12 hours before the deed was filed. My signature? Neat. Too neat. A digital ghost of my handwriting. No smudge, no curve hesitation. I sent the file to Maura. She used to work compliance for a firm in Houston, knew every trick in the book about metadata, PDF tampering, digital tracebacks. She messaged back within minutes. "Send me a clean copy. I'll tear it apart." Her words were blunt, and that's why I trusted her. I didn't feel rage, not yet, just a strange kind of quiet, like when you finally understand the rules of a game that's been played on you your whole life. This wasn't about family anymore. This was fraud. I opened another document, started listing everything. Timeline of events, names, IP addresses where I could find them, who signed what, when, where. I wasn't crying this time, not like before. That part of me had dried up. Daddy's voice came back to me, one of his old lines. "You don't need to fight like them. Just know how to break the chain." I wasn't here to scream. I was here to build a case, a wall, a version of myself they wouldn't see coming. I created a spreadsheet and labeled it Asset Theft, Family Index. One column for dates, one for names, 2 new ones at the end. Loyalty, liability. As I backed everything up, a small notification popped up at the bottom of my screen. New submission received, anonymous whistleblower form. My heart skipped. No name, no details. But the IP address? It traced back to Cormac's office network. Someone was breaking ranks. And I intended to find out who. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, organizing files into labeled folders when Mama's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before picking up. Her voice was softer than I remembered, like it had been filtered through some old filter of guilt and good intentions. She said, "Let's have dinner. Just the family. No papers, no drama, just us." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the bookshelf in front of me, all those cookbooks and law journals I never read anymore. Then she added, "Let's talk, like we used to." Something in me, it wanted to believe her, wanted to believe this was the beginning of something less broken. Maybe it was hope or foolishness. They've always looked alike when I hold them up to the light. I said yes. I didn't bring anything but myself. No folders, no flash drive, no voice recorder. I chose a simple black dress, the kind you wear when you want to be taken seriously but not provoke attention. I walked into that restaurant thinking maybe we were going to fix things. The private room smelled like rosemary and expensive wine. Charla was already there. Cormac sat next to her, reading something on his phone. Their boy, Jason, was drawing dinosaurs in a sketchbook. Mama sat at the head of the table like this was Sunday dinner in 1992. Everyone stood when I walked in, everyone except Cormac. We made small talk, or tried. Charla asked about my houseplants. Mama complimented my shoes. Cormac just smiled without showing his teeth. The server came and went with wine and plates. I took a sip of water and kept my jaw loose. I could feel my throat preparing for disappointment. Charla started telling stories, old ones, about the time I fell off the swing set or cried during a spelling bee. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, the kind of laugh you use when you're trying not to choke on history. Mama raised her glass. To healing what time has hardened. I nodded. Something in my chest tightened. Then dessert came, and with it, a folder. Cormac slid it across the table like it was a napkin. "We figured this might help smooth things over," he said. "It's just a standard amendment, you know, to make things official. Clean." I didn't touch it right away. Charla leaned forward. "It's not like you were really going to keep the land, right? This just makes it easier." Mama added, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Devrin." I opened the folder. Quitclaim deed, my name, my signature, a blank space waiting to be filled. I looked at Jason. He looked up from his sketchbook, eyebrows pulled tight like he could feel something shifting but didn't know what. I closed the folder, pushed it back across the table, whispered, "You brought a child to watch you rob me." No one said a word. I stood up, straightened my dress. "You will never again speak to me in rooms like this," I said, my voice calm, "unless it's across a courtroom." Cormac smirked. Charla's hands trembled slightly. Mama sucked in air through her teeth and hissed, "Devrin, you're embarrassing us." I turned to her slowly, met her eyes. "No, you did that when you chose an estate over your daughter." I reached into my purse and pulled out a 20, left it under my untouched dessert plate. A final tip, a final line. Jason's eyes followed me as I walked to the door. I gave him the smallest nod, mouthing, "I'm okay." He didn't nod back, but he watched. Outside, the air felt cleaner, realer. The kind of air that makes you want to start something instead of just survive it. I dialed Maura. When she answered, I didn't wait. "Get ready," I said. "We're going forward." I caught my reflection in the screen, not smiling, just sharp, like glass that finally stopped trying to be a window. They thought I'd sign with my hand. I'm about to sign with consequences. It was a little past 9. I was sitting in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table, legal plans, backups of emails, screenshots from county records. Maura had just finished reviewing metadata from the file I sent her earlier. "Tight case," she said in her last email, "but keep everything dated and clean." I was finishing a draft affidavit when the doorbell rang. Once, then again, harder. I glanced at the security app on my phone. Cormac, standing on my porch, pacing, his hand clenching something long by his side. I zoomed in. A bat. He shouldn't be here. Not at this hour. Not by himself. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. But I could hear him, voice sharp, talking to the air like I was supposed to be listening from behind the wood. "Devrin, open the door. We need to talk." No one needs to talk with a bat in one hand and pepper spray on their hip. But I did open it, Didn't swing it wide, just enough for him to see my face. He looked worse than usual, flushed, sweating like he'd run up the steps, though I hadn't heard him do it. He was wearing slacks and a wrinkled button-up shirt, the sleeves rolled to the elbows. "You're hurting the family," he said, before I could speak. "These legal games, they're reckless." I didn't say anything. He stepped forward. I didn't move back, but I did tighten my fingers on the inside edge of the door. "We can still settle this, quietly. You transfer the property back, drop your claim. No headlines, no embarrassment." His eyes flicked behind me, toward the living room, toward the documents. I stared back. "You're trespassing, Cormac." He smirked. "Not yet. You opened the door." And then he crossed the threshold. Without being asked, that's when I saw the pepper spray clipped to his waistband. His fingers twitched toward it. "I'm not leaving here empty-handed. You're not here to talk." He took one more step, and I stepped back. "You don't understand how much is at stake," he said. "No, Cormac," I replied. "I do. I just don't care anymore." He raised the bat slightly, not to swing, just enough to let it be seen. My thumb hit the silent panic button on my key fob. 3 seconds. That's how long it takes. His voice went up a notch. "You think this is just about you? You think you get to tear everything down and walk away?" I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. 2 men stepped in from the side entrance, not in uniform, but trained. Calm. One reached for the pepper spray before Cormac even noticed him. The other caught his wrist as it jerked. Cormac shouted, "She's manipulating everything! She's insane!" One of the guards said, "Sir, you are trespassing. You are armed. This isn't a misunderstanding." He struggled, but they didn't rough him up, just held him long enough for reality to catch up. I stood still. Not angry, not shaking, just done. "No charges," I told them. "Not yet." The taller guard looked at me. "You sure?" "Let him walk out knowing what restraint looks like." Cormac's eyes darted between us. He realized, maybe for the first time, that I wasn't bluffing, that I had built something he couldn't bulldoze. They walked him out. He didn't say another word. I locked the door myself, stood there for a while, staring at the handle. Then I turned, walked down the hall, and opened the safe, the pen, the deed. I took them both. Sat at my desk, hit record on my voice log. Tonight, Cormac Ledoux arrived at 9:47 p.m., armed, hostile, uninvited. My tone was flat, legal, precise. This is not a family dispute. This is a pattern of intimidation, of coercion. I am no longer a relative. I am a witness. I clicked the file closed, looked out the window into the dark. For the first time, I didn't feel like the one being hunted. I felt like the one holding the map. The next move would be mine. Maura's text buzzed in a moment later. "I have what you need, but it's going to get messy." I stared at the screen, then looked up. My reflection in the glass wasn't smiling. They thought this was about money, but this is about freedom. I got there before anyone else. That was the plan. I wanted to walk that boardroom alone, feel the stillness before it turned into a war zone. The lights were low, but the projector was already humming. A quiet whir, like a storm warming up in a bottle. Maura showed up a few minutes later with a thick binder and 3 flash drives. She didn't speak right away, just gave me a look, part nod, part warning. I laid out the leather folders one by one, each embossed with a name. Charla, Cormac, Orleana. "This isn't revenge," I said under my breath. "This is clarity." Maura slid the laptop across the table and connected the projector. "They made me the villain," I said. "Now I'll show them the script." The room was too cold for comfort. I'd worn gray slacks, a high-collar blouse, no jewelry, no makeup, just quiet armor. Enough to say, I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came here to dismantle them. At 10:02, Charla walked in. Big sunglasses, big smile, small voice. Cormac strolled in next, checking his phone like this was just another deposition he'd already won. Mama came last, no eye contact, just settled in her chair like it hurt to sit too long in one place. Thank you all for coming, I began. I handed out the folders like party favors. Each had a copy of the invitation, time-stamped documents, a legal disclaimer, and a copy of today's agenda. Polite, precise, no room for protest. Then I pressed the button. The screen lit up. Asset Movement Timeline, Exhibit A. My voice didn't shake. Let's walk through the past 3 years. I think we all deserve to remember things clearly. Slide 1, the original property layout. No commentary, just a date. Slide 2, the first modification request, filed by Cormac's office. Slide 3, a timeline of legal signatures logged through the county system. Then came the new slides. Mora's, hospital records. My name, date, time of admission. Location, Lafayette. Slide after that, metadata pulled from the signing document. Cormac's office IP, user login from his personal device. File uploaded within 18 minutes of my discharge. The silence was thick. Charla finally said, "What is this?" I didn't look at her. "It's a receipt," I said, "for your silence." The final slide hit harder than the rest. A green forensic overlay of the signature, mine, compared with my verified driver's license signature. One was real, the other, a perfect lift. Artificial, digital, traced. Cormac leaned in, his voice sharp. "You can't prove intent." I didn't blink. "But I can prove access. And you taught me. Intent follows opportunity." Mama still hadn't looked up. She knew. They all did. I let it sit there for a moment longer. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a fresh envelope. Inside were settlement notices. Not lawsuits, not yet. Just a line in the sand. "You have 72 hours to reverse all transfers. If not, we go full criminal." I freeze every asset. I file with the bar. And I drag this thing from news outlet to news outlet until someone cares. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. I was tired of pretending this was a family matter. Charla's eyes started to water. She opened her mouth, then stopped. Tried again. "Devrin, I raised a hand, not rudely. Just enough to say, "No. We're past tears and stories." Cormac shoved his chair back so hard it screeched, stormed out without saying another word. Mama picked up the pen, signed her copy, didn't look at me. Charla stayed in her seat, hands folded, staring at the folder like it had teeth. I didn't press her. I collected the signatures I had, closed my folder, and shut down the projector. Everyone left, one by one. No one said goodbye. I stood alone for a moment, the green light of the projector still casting a glow across the table. "That was the easy part," I said to no one. Mora came back in with her phone in hand. "Check this out," she said. "They're already scrambling." And I knew, cornered people don't surrender, they bite. The pinging wouldn't stop. By the time I turned over and checked my phone, I had 13 missed calls, 26 texts, and a voicemail from a number I hadn't saved since college. That one I listened to first. "Devrin, it's Clay from the firm. You need to see what's going around. It's bad." I sat up, swung my legs out of bed, and pulled the laptop from the nightstand. It took 15 seconds to load. The video had over 500,000 views before breakfast. It was a clip, me, seated, smiling, signing something. That part was real. The audio wasn't. The caption read, "When the family gave her everything, and she stabbed them anyway." Edited laughter, dramatic music, slow zoom on my eyes, like I was some kind of con artist mastermind. The comments were worse. "Greedy snake. Never trust the quiet ones." She probably forged half her childhood, too. I closed the tab, then reopened it. I watched the whole thing again, not out of self-hate, out of study. They weren't trying to prove anything. They were trying to drown the truth in noise. 2 hours later, it got louder. A podcast, local, popular, run by a former high school classmate of Charla's, posted a new episode. Family first or family foul? There was no subtlety in the marketing. My face blurred in the promo image, but my name said in the first 3 seconds. The host said she wasn't picking sides, just asking questions. They played voice clips from Charla, teary, broken, saying things like, "Some people just don't understand loyalty anymore. They turn pain into power." They hinted at me having breakdowns, manipulative patterns, disconnection from reality. I listened once, then again. Then I wrote one note to myself. They want public sympathy. I want documented truth. Maura called. You want to sue? I was quiet for a beat. That's a distraction, I said. Let them aim low. I'll build high. That afternoon, I started posting the timeline screenshots. Original documents with file metadata exposed. My hospital records timestamped to the hour of the forged signature. I made a digital archive. Locked, read only, tracked. Every person who clicked left a footprint. Then I wrote one sentence. I have never been louder than the truth, but they are louder than shame. By evening, the tone started shifting. Private messages, an anonymous email. Keep going, some of us are watching. A direct message from an estate attorney. We saw what they did. You're not crazy. Not all loud is legal, and not all quiet is weak. I stood in front of my office window, watching the streetlights blink on, and thought back to something else from the boardroom. Charla didn't sign. She held the pen, looked at me, and paused. It wasn't a long pause, but it was real. A crack. And cracks are where light gets in. So I sat down again and started building something new. Not for public release. Not yet. A psychological profile. Cormac thrived on dominance. He built cases like pyramids, always heavy at the base, meant to crush opposition through weight. Charla folded under heat, but not because she didn't care, because she couldn't carry it. Mama disappeared, even when she was in the room. I built a folder labeled Press Strategy, Contingency. Inside it, screenshots, voice memos, public records, timestamps, gaps. A playbook I wasn't ready to run, just ready to own. They taught me to be quiet. Now I teach them what quiet does when it learns how to aim. I leaned back, cracked my knuckles, and prepared to log out for the night. Then my secure alert buzzed. New message. Encrypted. Routed through our firm's internal whistleblower system. No name. Just one line. Check file 72. It's not what it looks like. I checked the metadata. Device was registered to Ledoux Yates. They're not all loyal, and I just found my leak. They all showed up. I arrived early, again. Just me, a thermos of black coffee, and the thick beige folder that had become my anchor. I stepped out of the car into a morning too quiet for what it was about to hold. Camera flashes hit me the second I reached the courthouse steps. I didn't blink. I'd rehearsed blinking. I knew what that moment looked like from the outside. A woman about to betray her bloodline, or the one who finally had enough. Inside, I heard my heels hit marble. Every step echoed like a name they'd stopped using. I walked past 3 security checkpoints, nodded at 2 clerks I'd seen once before, and waited outside courtroom 3B. They were already inside. Charla, perfectly styled, whispering something to their lawyer. Cormac, stone-faced like a man who thought he'd bought the ending already. Mama. Orleana, dressed in her Sunday best like she'd forgotten what weekday it was. No one looked up. They came for the performance. I came for the record. When the judge called my name, I stood, walked slow, took the oath. My attorney began with the documents, timestamps, forensics, audit trails. Nothing flashy, just facts. One stacked on another, like bricks. By the time she reached the signature overlay, no one was moving. Then came my turn. I laid out my timeline, the dates, the silence, the emails unanswered. No shaking voice, no dramatics. They waited for me to crack. I didn't. The judge asked about the emotional toll. I paused. Let the room feel it before I answered. I didn't want to fight them, I said. But they made peace impossible. I looked at Mama. She didn't flinch. Cormac shifted. Charla looked down. That pause. They noticed. Recess came fast. 15 minutes. I headed toward the hall, and she followed me. Mama. She touched my arm like it still meant something. Her voice was low, almost tired. You're going to ruin this family's name. I looked at her, not even surprised. You did that, I said, when you traded my truth for their lies. She didn't blink, just whispered, "You'll understand when you're older." I leaned in, closer than I needed to. "I'm older now, and I understand perfectly." She walked away. Back in court, the judge called us in again. I sat straighter. Then a clerk entered, whispering something to the bailiff, who handed the judge a small flash drive. The courtroom quieted. "This file was submitted to the court's evidence server anonymously," the judge said. He played it on the screen behind him. My voice, clear, private, from weeks ago. "My family is dead to me. All of them." Gasps, right on cue. Charla looked smug. Cormac reclined in his chair like a man unburdened. I didn't flinch. "Yes," I said, standing. "That's me. I said it." Silence. Then I continued. "Grief is a funeral. Betrayal is a burial." The judge didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. The courtroom had gone still. My lawyer stepped in, reframing the clip. Personal, informal, not a contradiction, but a confession. Of trauma, not guilt. The judge nodded once, not in agreement, in recognition. He called time, gave his ruling window. Verdict will be issued in 48 hours. Outside, the air felt sharper. Reporters flanked me, mics in hand. "Do you think your family will ever speak to you again?" I turned. Calm. "Sure." "I'm not waiting on their voice." I looked past them, toward the horizon I'd built alone. I found mine. The email came in at 7:14 a.m. No bells, no bold headlines, just a subject line that read, "Ruling and Resolution." I clicked it without breathing. The words stared back at me, unblinking. Full restitution granted. All transfers reversed. Public statement authorized by the court. The case file, closed, no crowds, no applause, just a quiet note from the law, acknowledging what I already knew. I'd won. I poured myself a cup of chicory coffee and sat in the same seat where I'd read the forged deed months ago. The sun hit the same spot on the kitchen tile. Same routine, new weight lifted. Some wars don't end with flags. They end with silence. I didn't forward the email, didn't call anyone. I just took one long sip, let the warmth hit the edge of my chest, and let myself feel what victory without celebration feels like. A few hours later, the internet did what it does. Someone, anonymous of course, uploaded a clip of me sitting in my car after the final hearing. My head bowed, my face still, one tear rolling down my cheek. I remember that moment, not because of the tear, but because of the breath that followed. The exhale after months of inhaling pain. But the caption told a different story. Cold-hearted heiress breaks down after losing family fortune. Clients messaged my assistant. Friends texted. The staff asked if we should issue a formal response. I told them no. Instead, I recorded a 1-minute voiceover. No script, no filter. Tears don't mean regret. Sometimes they're just the body remembering to breathe. We overlaid it on the video and re-uploaded it to our page. By nightfall, our version had double the views. Still, I knew better. Public opinion has a short memory and a loud mouth, and the quiet ones? We're only heard when we bleed. That evening, I went to check the mail. Bills, a magazine I never subscribed to, and a small envelope with no return address. Inside, a folded letter, written in uneven, oversized handwriting, and a drawing, a family tree. Jason's name scribbled at the bottom. My branch circled in red crayon. Next to it, 2 words. I believe you. The letter said sorry, that he knew something was off at dinner, that he didn't know what to do, but he knew what they did wasn't right. I held it like it was glass. Of all the things I'd won, this one cracked me open. The truth doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it just needs to be written in pencil by a kid brave enough to know better. I wrote back. But I didn't send it. I folded the letter and placed it in my safe, right next to the pen and the deed. 3 days later, I found myself parked across the street from the house I grew up in. Porch lights were on. Someone was watching TV. It looked exactly the same and completely foreign all at once. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't need to. A neighbor waved from his driveway. Said, "They say you don't talk to them no more. That true?" I nodded once. Talking and listening aren't the same thing, I said. I'm just done doing both. I drove off, slower than usual, letting that version of me stay behind on that street like a shadow I'd finally outgrown. Back at home, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, the business expansion plans I'd drafted a year ago. Plans I paused when the fight started. Plans that waited while I bled. I signed them, used the Waterman pen they once used to take my voice. This time, I signed for me.